train back to breeze out of another thing. Out you know, oh Lord, out you know, it's in my heart and baby down in my soul. You baby, you can't take it no more. No, I know I'm walking out that door the way you treated me too many times before. Don't you know you love me, baby, too? Oh, you know I want you there, I want to be right there with you. I know I gotta keep you by my side till the day I die. 'Cause baby, ecstasy is in my hand. Oh, when I'm holding yours in mine and walking in the sand. Oh, baby, you know it's fine. Oh, now you done and piss me off. You ain't done something you shouldn't have done. Baby, I'm mad. I'm going on. Oh, I'm going on.
So, how do you empty out a closet full of dead babies? Open the door. And how do you stop a dead baby spinning on a ceiling fan with a shovel? How do you unload a truckload of dead babies with a pitchfork? I blame this all on one particular group of people I hung out with at a coffee shop in New Orleans. Yeah. I think it's pretty shit. Anyways, let's get my fat head out of the camera. wrong with the fish tank here.
North Korea, and you will hear that in a moment. Percula exiting narrator. Time ago on a flight probably in Guam.
Entered. Exiting narrator. I have no concerns about this.
Behind it, but
There we go. Found some
has
news.
not worked. And so that's certainly rhetorically where he's going. The question still is whether or not this is a rhetorical flourish without a strategy.
So much of the conversation over the past 24 hours or so, Jeff, has been directed at the very tough rhetoric uttered by the President of the United States, not so much Kim Jong-un and his regime. So there's one school of thought that suggested that he actually, President Trump, undercut his own message.
Well, I don't know if he undercut his own message, but he did send a clear message. I mean, his words were unmistakable. He said further threats will result in force and fury and fire and fury and power, like the world has never seen. I mean, that's something that's pretty clear to understand. There have been further threats since he said it, and there has been no reaction yet. We'll see if this just is written off as just another thing Donald Trump says, or it reflects some new policy. But so far, there's just been no change, notwithstanding the threat.
And John Kirby, in the course of today, we first saw the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, deliver what was widely seen as a much more restrained statement, followed by the Defense Secretary, James Mattis, a very tough statement, similar, in fact, to what we heard from the President. Is this a good cop, bad cop routine on behalf of the U.S. for the North Koreans?
No, I don't think so. I think this is strategy after the fact. This is communications after it's already out. So the president says this, crazy thing yesterday, and then everybody had to scramble to figure out how they were going to react to it. And clearly, in my mind, what's happened here is Tillerson was told to go out and say what he said, let a little bit of air out of the tire. Because look, this is a guy who doesn't like talking to the press, and he sure don't like doing it on his airplane. And then you had Mattis follow up. Mattis always wants to go behind the State Department, which makes sense. He did it in a written statement, which means it could be very controlled, and it was stronger. A person close to Mattis told me he struck a sober tone somewhere between the president and the Secretary of State, which was probably their goal. I don't see this as good cop, bad cop, but this was clearly directed at these guys after the president made his comment to try to put some context to it.
The State Department said, Deanna, that the administration, all the administration leaders, they're speaking with one voice today, but clearly they're not necessarily speaking with one voice.
Yeah, it doesn't sound that. Look, historically, I think it's pretty common that you would see split reaction and even opinions within administrations, particularly within the Defense Department and state, what have you. But what's surprising here is this administration, the president in particular, had 7 months now to come up with some sort of strategy, at least when it came to addressing the American public on North Korea. He seems very well prepared to talk about Russia and Russia investigation, but they seem frazzled when it came to North Korea. You would think, obviously, that this is a president who's briefed daily on information that we are not privy to, and from what reports suggest, he seems baffled and disturbed by this Washington Post report yesterday that North Korea could, in fact, miniaturize a nuclear weapon, and thus we saw that sort of solemn mood that Dana described yesterday. But it's not that reassuring that we can continue to see different responses from within his national security team. Or can I just posit an alternative view or potential scenario to that? That he wasn't necessarily, surprised by the Washington Post report, that this is intelligence that he has, that he's known, and the fact that it was out there allowed him, in his mind, to be presidential, to talk about an issue that puts him in a position of a leadership position on the world stage, and talk about an issue that is important, that is not Russia.
And remember, this report came off of a classified assessment, so it's still not good. It's still not appropriate to talk about it. I mean, I'm flabbergasted that it leaked. It really shouldn't have. But for him then to pile on that on a classified assessment, which is on something so incredibly sensitive, was
well, especially when he could have been really embracing the Security Council vote too. This was a win for this administration. You had 15 countries unanimously vote to increase sanctions against North Korea. This would have been a win for him that he could have talked about and touted yesterday.
Because the president, he could have very easily, after this DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency leak was given to the Washington Post, classified information, the assessment of how many bombs the North Koreans may already have, 60, according to this one estimate, maybe fewer. The estimate had maybe 60 nuclear bombs, and that they miniaturized the warhead. The president very easily, instead of issuing this very tough statement, he could have said, this is another leak, a dangerous leak. It's very bad for the country to have these kinds of. We're going to go after the leakers. Whoever leaked this information, they're going to go to jail. Whatever he could have said that. Instead, he uttered very different words.
Right, and it seems to me the rule usually is when there is communication confusion, it reflects substantive confusion. It reflects that the administration has not figured out how to deal with North Korea. Now they have a lot of company in that. The Bush administration, the Clinton administration, the Obama administration didn't have an effective strategy, but it certainly doesn't seem like the Trump administration has one either, and I think that's why you see different administrations officials saying different things.
Yeah.
I mean, can I just offer, I think of all the national security issues that they've dealt with, I do think they should get some credit here for having the most measured, deliberate approach to North Korea. Now, it has been communication-wise, it has been a little spotty, and what he did yesterday only undermined the very thoughtful approach that Haley and Tillerson and Madison and McMaster are actually trying to apply this. He's not making their jobs any easier.
All right, everybody stick around. Don't go too
All right.
far away. The breaking news continues here on the Situation
I'll be
Room with
back.
new details of
I'm
President
gonna have to mute this for a
Trump's
second.
tough talk for
One
Korea, but
minute.
it backfired.
Kim, like his father, is known to use
I
bluster.
think we have
and
spawning
calculating
going on right
to stir
now.
the pot, then
Check
sit
that
back
out.
and gauge the response. But even if they're speaking in terms Kim would, quote, understand, some believe President Trump and his defense secretary will get the opposite of what they're looking for from Kim's regime.
They say they need nuclear weapons to deter against this war-hungry United States. So these kind of comments, or even other comments vowing to attack North Korea if they cross a technological threshold, will only affirm that, to North Korea's mind, why they need nuclear weapons.
But there are those who say the rhetoric from previous American presidents hasn't worked, and tougher talk is needed right now. One analyst who has supported President Trump in the past says this is a more dangerous moment than Trump's predecessors faced with North Korea. And the president's language sends a necessary message to Kim Jong-un that America can act with force if pushed.
Well, Brian, the administration is also now trying to get the word out that there's no daylight between what Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said, what the president said, on the rhetoric they're both using. They're both using with North Korea. That's what they're suggesting.
They are suggesting that, Wolf. Tonight, the State Department spokeswoman a short time ago said Secretary Tillerson and President Trump spoke within the past 24 hours, that they're in agreement on the pressure campaign against North Korea. They speak with one voice, according to her. But Tillerson also did say today that you'd never like to have someone in a corner without a way for them to get out diplomatically. He said it's hard to say the U.S. has Kim Jong-un in a corner right now.
All right, Brian, thanks very much. Brian Todd reporting the breaking news next. A dire new warning from the Trump administration in North Korea of death and destruction. We're following new threats from both sides tonight.
Where are we? About to see Progressive's new Home Quote Explorer, where you can compare multiple quote options online and choose what's right for you.
Oh.
Flo and Jamie here to see HQX. Flo and Jamie, request entry. Slovakia, Triceratops, Tapioca, Racquetball, Staccato,
Fiona Jaime.
Pumpernickel, Pudding. Hey guys. Home Quote Explorer. It's home insurance made easy.
That's what it's. Hey guys.
Vacation rentals? Search Home to Go Florida from $29, Texas from $45, Home to Go California from $34, New York from $37. The world's largest vacation rental search engine.
Home to Go.
Do you have bruised skin? You need Derman Moisturizing Bruise Formula for mature skin. Derman uses proven ingredients that help improve the appearance of bruises. Help your bruised skin. Get Derman now at Walgreens, Walmart, CVS, and Rite Aid.
When you wake up with Miracle here, your mornings can come to life with sound. Call the number below so that your day can start just like this. Today can be the day you join millions of Americans who have already started hearing better days with Miracle Ear. If you do happen to have hearing loss, Miracle Ear can help keep you more connected to the world around you and the people who matter most. Now's the time to pick up the phone and schedule your free no-obligation hearing evaluation. Miracle Ear has 1,300 locations nationwide, so your caring, dependable Miracle Ear Center is right around the corner. Our exclusive, cutting-edge Genius 2.0 technology, which offers our absolute best sound quality ever, makes connecting to your mobile device, television, and the world around you easier than ever. At Miracle Ear, we take the time to get to know you so we can ensure you hear what's most important in your life. Our hearing care specialists are committed to addressing any questions you may have before, during, and after we identify the perfect solution for you. So when you choose Miracle Ear, you can rest easy knowing that from day one, you'll receive attentive, ongoing support. And with a 3-year warranty, we're always available to assist with anything at all, big or small. Now's the time to schedule your free, no-obligation hearing evaluation. Our experts are trained to help you find a hearing solution that fits any budget. Act now, and you can take advantage of our generous 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's absolutely no risk to you. When you hear clearly, this is what your day could sound like. This is what it can look like. And this is what it can feel like. And it only gets better from here. Why wait? You can start hearing your better days by scheduling your free hearing evaluation today. Miracle Ear. Hear a better day.
In just days,
The Publishers Clearinghouse $15 million summer prize event will be over. Don't miss your last chance to win. Hurry, enter at pch.com before it's too late. August 31st, you could win $15 million. Don't miss out.
Tonight, a war of words heats up.
Oh, yeah, best not make any more threats to the United States.
Is the president ready to act, or was it an empty threat? Aaron Burnett out front investigates. Live tonight at 7 Eastern.
We all have that list of things we need to get done. Well, now, there's Thumbtack. Thumbtack connects you with professionals for free. Need a painter? Here's Thumbtack. Time for that plumber? Thumbtack. Just tell Thumbtack what you need and get connected with local professionals ready to help. Compare prices and reviews, then hire the pro that's right for you. It's fast, easy, and always free. Hire skilled professionals for absolutely everything. And we mean everything. So what are you waiting for? Go to thumbtack.com today.
I wanted this 55-inch TV for less than $30 on DealDash.com.
I got this $1,200 computer for $100.71.
These aren't actors, they're real people who got real savings at DealDash.com, the fair and honest bidding site. At DealDash.com, you can save up to 99%, but hurry, everything must go.
And shipping is always free.
Visit DealDash.com and start bidding today.
Saturday nights at 9 on CNN.
Happening now, breaking news, aggressive warning after the president threatens to unleash fire and fury on North Korea. The defense secretary is issuing a dramatic ultimatum of his own. We're following the scramble to respond to the commander-in-chief's provocative and improvised warning. Tweeting about nukes, the president follows up on his delicate.
There's way too many people that are embarrassed to smile. Most clients have already been to a dentist, and they feel like they can't afford a real smile makeover. At Brighter Image Lab, we don't believe that a smile makeover is a luxury, and we don't think you can put a price under smile. I can get you incredible results in a matter of minutes, and you're going to be amazed. We can take your smile from bad to beautiful. Our process is lab direct. There's no dentist visit. At Brighter Image Lab, we believe your smile is too beautiful not to smile whenever you want. I think the results speak for themselves. I did it for her. I'll do it for you. You can't afford a smile makeover, and you're going to smile and smile and smile. Come see how we made these results happen at brighterimagelab.com.
Spectre of nuclear war hangs over the escalating rhetoric on both sides. President Trump touting the strength of America's nuclear arsenal, this on a day after he vowed to respond to Kim Jong-un's threats with power like the world has never seen before. We're now learning those provocative remarks were improvised. Defense Secretary James Mattis is now backing up the president with an unusually confrontational statement of his own. Mattis demanding that Kim Jong-un stand down from his pursuit of nuclear weapons, warning his actions could lead to the end of his regime. And the destruction of his people.
They call President Trump's remarks a load of nonsense. They say that President Trump fails to grasp the gravity of the situation on the Korean Peninsula. And this really stands out. They say that they believe dialogue will not work with the U.S. president, that only absolute force will work. I want to read to you a portion of this because they actually detail their plan for an attack on Guam, the island that contains key U.S. military assets. It says here, quote, as already clarified, the strategic force of the KPA is seriously examining the plan for an enveloping strike at Guam through simultaneous fire of 4 Hwasong-12 intermediate-range strategic ballistic rockets in order to interdict the enemy forces on major military bases in Guam and to signal a crucial warning to the U.S. So they're targeting the naval base Guam, Anderson Air Force Base, the Coast Guard Station, more than 6,000 U.S. troops and more than 160,000 American citizens living on that island, along with an estimated 10,000 tourists. The island packed right now with tourists, and North Korea now issuing this direct threat as a result of President Trump's remarks more than 24 hours ago. All of this also happening as there was a major demonstration happening in the North Korean capital, an anti-U.S. demonstration about the sanctions measure that was passed by the United Nations unanimously earlier this week. North Koreans, tens of thousands of them, organized in the city protesting against the sanctions and against the United States. I have been inside the North Korean capital, and it's amazing how they mobilize people so this is something that the government arranges. People are expected to attend. This is all designed to send a message to the United States, a very defiant message. The big question now moving forward, what else will Kim Jong-un do? Will he leave it with this strongly worded statement, or will there be action in terms of another missile test or even something more? We know that North Korea for quite some time has been ready to push the button on their 6th nuclear test, and judging by this statement that has just been put out within the last few minutes, they are really dialing up the rhetoric even further, Wolf.
And this statement, I'm just going through it myself, this North Korean statement not only saying they are ready, they're getting ready to launch 4 intermediate-range strategic ballistic missiles against U.S. targets on Guam, the U.S. territory of Guam. They then go on in this statement to ridicule the President of the United States. They point out that the President made that statement about fire and fury at a golf course in New Jersey, that he's failing to grasp what they call the ongoing grave situation, that he's simply speaking with a load of nonsense. Sound dialogue is not possible, they say, with such a guy bereft of reason, and only absolute force can work with him. The statement adds, this is the judgment made by the service personnel of the KPA strategic force. So it's going to be amazing to see how the president responds to these statements of ridicule coming from the North Korean regime. This is really, Will, and I want your thoughts because you've been there more than a dozen times. This is clearly going to escalate all the nuclear tension right now.
So what we have just seen in the past few minutes is a direct response, a direct warning to President Trump, signed off on by Kim Jong-un. That's why these messages often take 24 hours or more to release, because there are a lot of people who read through these messages and they sign off on them. And so what you saw President Trump throw out his hand, North Korea now throwing out their hand and upping the ante. Obviously, this is a country that is not going to back down. They've made it clear through their now direct insults of the U.S. president and also strategically laying out their ability to simultaneously launch these intermediate missiles. And they have simultaneously launched missiles before, Wolf. It was back in February, I believe, when North Korea launched these same intermediate range missiles, and 3 of them landed within 200 nautical miles of Japan. So this is a capability that North Korea has demonstrated. And the reason why they're talking about a simultaneous missile launch is because the THAAD missile defense system, which was put in place in Guam a few years ago after another North Korean threat, could potentially be overwhelmed by a simultaneous deadliest missile attack. That is the big concern. The missile defense systems may not be able to handle multiple missiles being launched simultaneously at a single target. So North Korea essentially saying that they have a potential plan to try to strike U.S. military assets in a way that the missile defense systems in Guam may not be able to protect them from theoretically. This is assuming that the missiles would be accurate, that they could actually reach their target, that they would be effective. Those are all big questions. But North Korea drawing a red line just like President Trump's red line. And we do now have to wait and see how the United States is going to respond, because as President Trump said, threatening behavior would be met with fire and fury. North Korea is saying they're prepared to respond to that with absolute force.
And it's very interesting, as you point out, they spell out in this document that they just released this statement, the exact nature of what they're planning to do as far as Guam is concerned. These 4 intermediate range missiles, they say, would be launched. They would fly over Japan, clearly a violation of international agreements, and they would land, according to this statement, 30 to 40 kilometers away from Guam in the Pacific. This unprecedented step, the statement says, is to give stronger confidence in certain victory and courage to the Korean people and help them witness what they call the wretched plight of the U.S. imperialists. They're spelling out in great detail what they're planning on doing with these 4 intermediate range ballistic missiles. Will, have they done this before? Have they given that kind of information? But yesterday the president said if there are any more threats from North Korea, the U.S. will respond with fire and fury. This is a direct threat that the North Koreans have just released.
And what we're getting a sense of as well is the confidence of the North Koreans in their technical capabilities. The fact that they are now spelling out specifically what they intend to do in terms of the range, the missile trajectory to go 2,100 miles from the Korean Peninsula to the island of Guam, a small 210 square mile island, 30% of which is U.S. military assets. They are essentially saying, we can strike, we can demonstrate exactly how we will do it, and perhaps this is the only way, from the North Korean perspective, to send a message to President Trump that they are serious, that they will strike back if they feel threatened by the United States. So clearly, the rhetoric has now been dialed up even further. If it was white hot yesterday, it's even hotter today.
Certainly is, and the statement concludes with these very ominous words, and let me read it to our viewers. The KPA strategic force of North Korea will finally complete the plan until mid-August and report it to the commander-in-chief of the DPRK nuclear force and wait for his order. We keep closely watching the speech and behavior of the United States. Clearly a warning to the President of the United States, the Defense Secretary, the Secretary of State. North Korea is watching your speech, and if the rhetoric continues along the lines we've heard over the past 24 hours, the impression that they're leaving is that they will launch these 4 intermediate range ballistic missiles. So mid-August is not very far away, Will.
It's not, and certainly this new round of sanctions that was just passed unanimously most certainly will not take effect by then. Sanctions take a very long time. North Korea is saying that they already have these capabilities, and I've had conversations inside the country as recently as a month and a half ago, and there is a similar tone from authorities there. But even back then, there was no anticipation of this kind of rhetoric from the United States, directly from the commander-in-chief. And so,
if you have a perfect smile, then this commercial is not for you. If you won the lottery and your teeth are absolutely spot on, then go ahead and skip this commercial. My name is Phil Watson. I'm at BrighterRichLife.com, and I build smile makeovers for people all over the world. And the reason why they come to me instead of their dentist is because it's too freaking expensive. I know it, you know it. Most people don't know about removable dental veneers and about how they can change your smile. But if you have bad teeth, if you have crooked teeth, if you have misaligned teeth, you already know what your smile would be if it was amazing. You know the changes it would make in your life. Look at these amazing results. This is an after picture of someone that we did just a few days ago. Now let me show you what they look like 14 days before that. Here's another one. 14 days before that. Guys, if your smile looks like this, and you want to change it to this, come see me at BrighterRichLife.com. Don't screw around with your smile. Don't put it off. Don't wait. We build amazing smile makeovers. Our process is lab direct. There's no dentist visit. You don't have to come in. There's not x-rays. All you have to do is want to work with us online. There's no reason to live your life putting your hand over your smile. Come see me at frederickslab.com.
Is the U.S. has satellites, they have radar systems, they have ships, submarines that are watching North Korea constantly, watching for any signs or signals of a potential missile launch. You can count on what is already 24/7 coverage of North Korea, if at all possible, ratcheting up even further in the coming days. The North Koreans may have a lot of trouble exactly hitting their target, but nobody's betting that they won't be able to do something. So even earlier today, we saw the U.S. Defense Secretary turning up his rhetoric, a defense secretary that just a short time ago warned that war with North Korea might be a bad idea.
Tonight, a dire warning from Defense Secretary James Mattis that North Korea should cease any consideration of actions that would lead to the end of its regime and the destruction of its people. War-like language. Mattis also telling the world North Korea's military will continue to be grossly overmatched by ours and would lose any arms race or conflict. A very different tone than Mattis's previous statements emphasizing diplomacy and what war would mean for South Korea.
It will involve the massive shelling of an allies' capital, which is one of the most densely packed cities on Earth. It would be a war that fundamentally we don't want.
Kim Jong-un's regime undeterred.
Any plans to execute the preventive war devised by the U.S. would be met with an all-out war, wiping out all the strongholds of enemies, including the U.S. mainland.
All of this after North Korea threatened to attack Guam, a U.S. territory in the Western Pacific, where U.S. bombers are based and other aircraft that could be used to attack his regime.
He has been very threatening beyond a normal state.
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson says Trump's warning would hopefully keep Kim from reacting.
I think it was important that he deliver that message, avoid any miscalculation on their part.
If Tillerson was playing good cop, Mattis and the president were not.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
The commander of U.S. Missile Defenses told CNN the U.S. can defend against North Korean missiles today and in the future.
We can deal with the current threat that's presented today. As the threat matures, we have a plan in place to mature our capabilities to deal with that threat.
The Secretary of State still trying to reassure.
I have nothing that I have seen and nothing that I know of would indicate that the situation has dramatically changed in the last 44 hours. I think Americans should sleep well at night.
President Trump touting the effectiveness of the U.S. nuclear arsenal today, tweeting, "My first order as president was to renovate and modernize our nuclear arsenal. It is now far stronger and more powerful than ever before." Trump did order a review of U.S. nuclear weapons soon after taking office, something mandated by Congress to happen every 5 to 10 years. But it did not get underway until April, and there's no indication the nuclear arsenal is substantially different today.
So when and if North Korea were to launch these 4 missiles, there is a standard, very classified protocol that the U.S. military follows. They are able to see the heat signature of a missile launch almost instantly, and they go through these classified protocols to quickly determine if a North Korean missile is a threat to Japan, to South Korea, to Guam indeed, or to the United States. And if there is any decision that it is a threat to any of those areas, that is what would trigger the decision to try to shoot down a North Korean missile. It will be a very rapid process. It will be very tense if and when the North Koreans fire. Well,
Barbara Starr reporting from the Pentagon. Let's continue to follow the extraordinary news coming in right now. Senator Ed Markey, a Democrat of the Foreign Relations Committee, is joining us. Senator, as you know, yesterday the president threatened fire and fury on North Korea if any more threats come from North Korea. Well, you just saw the statement. We've been reporting it. This is a direct threat from the North Korean regime. They will launch 4 intermediate-range ballistic missiles aimed at Guam, a U.S. territory with about 160,000 U.S. citizens living there. If the rhetoric continues from the United States, what's your reaction to this?
My reaction is that this is getting very scary, very dangerous. It's escalating, and it could escalate out of control. We don't want an accidental, conventional conflict that could tripwire into a nuclear confrontation between the United States and North Korea. They have nuclear weapons that could destroy South Korea, that could destroy Japan right now. When General Mattis talks about the destruction of the people of North Korea, of the regime change in North Korea, it actually sounds like we're in the movie Dr. Strangelove, and the general is advising the president that we could get into a conflict, a thermonuclear conflict, and we might get our hair mussed, but that we will totally destroy their people. This is the kind of language that can be completely misinterpreted by the leaders of North Korea, that could wind up with an accidental conflict that could ultimately wind up with the deaths of hundreds of thousands or millions of people, including Americans along the demilitarized zone, 25,000 soldiers there, people who are in Guam, who are our people, who could be killed. It's time for the president to go to the negotiating table with the North Koreans and begin to discuss a peaceful resolution of this conflict. It is slipping very rapidly out of control.
In this North Korean statement, Senator, the North Koreans ridiculed President Trump. Let me read a couple sentences from the statement. The U.S. president and the Gulf links again let out a load of nonsense about fire and fury, failing to grasp the ongoing grave situation. Statement adds, it seems that he has not yet understood the statement. Sound dialogue is not possible with such a guy, bereft of reason, and only absolute force can work on him. How do you think the president's going to respond when he's being ridiculed by the leadership of North Korea?
Well, of course, our hope would be that he would respond the way President Kennedy did in the Cuban Missile Crisis and kept cool and calm and detached, trying to find a rational way out of the problem. But we have to be concerned that Donald Trump is going to respond in irrational, in a way that could, in fact, enhance this dangerous situation. So our hope, of course, is that the advisors around him will be able to impose some constraints. But the language by General Mattis today was not reassuring at all, talking about the destruction of the North Korean people. For the North Koreans, they fought a war with us. The United States killed hundreds of thousands of those North Koreans during the war. For them, that is something that we have to take into consideration as they hear what we're saying, again, about the destruction of their people, and understand that only through negotiation, only by sitting at a table, only by using economic means and bringing in the Chinese and the Russians to sit at the table, will we be able to resolve this conflict, or else I'm afraid this could just slip out of our control and into the hands of generals on both sides who will be trying to find slight military advantages that will result in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of millions of people.
Yesterday, the president said any more threats, he used the word threats, from the North Korean regime would result in the fire and fury, the power of the United States that the world has never seen before. As North Korea, with this statement that they just put out, crossed that red line that was drawn by the president?
Here's what I think. When the president says that they should not take any additional action, you know who he's been frightening? He's been frightening the American people. He's been frightening Asian nations who believe that a conflict could imminently be breaking out. It's
clear that he's not frightening the North Koreans. The North Koreans are now escalating and threatening Guam. They're threatening American citizens on Guam. They're threatening to shoot missiles over Japan towards Guam. And so that's just one more signal that we're receiving that dialogue, negotiations, is what we should be pursuing it, and we should be doing so urgently right now. And we should also, by the way, be naming an envoy to South Korea. We don't even have an ambassador to South Korea right now that could be our intermediary at this point. This entire situation that the administration is creating, they're saying they're good cops, they're bad cops. No, this is Keystone cops. This is no plan. This is not a strategy. This is just escalating like it's a schoolyard brawl with people yelling at each other. But now it's with two sides with nuclear weapons. It must end. We must begin negotiations now.
In the statement, Senator, the North Korean strategic commander says they're watching this.
If you have a perfect smile, then this commercial is not for you. If you won the lottery and your teeth are absolutely spot on, then go ahead and skip this commercial. My name's Bill Watson. I'm with BrighterRichLife.com, and I build smile makeovers for people all over the world. And the reason why they come to me instead of their dentist is because it's too freaking expensive. I know it, and you know it. Most people don't know about removable dental veneers and about how they can change your smile. But if you have bad teeth, if you have crooked teeth, if you have misaligned teeth, you already know what your smile would be if it was amazing. You know the changes it would make in your life. Look at these amazing results. This is an after picture of someone that we did just a few days ago. Now let me show you what they look like 14 days before that. Here's another one. 14 days before that. Guys, if your smile looks like this and you want to change it to this, come see me at BrighterRichLife.com. Don't screw around with your smile. Don't put it off. Don't wait. We build amazing smile makeovers. Our process is lab direct. There's no dentist visit. You don't have to come in. There's not x-rays. All you have to do is want to work with us online. There's no reason to live your life putting your hand over your smile. Come see me at BrighterRichLife.com.
And towards Guam, and in this very detailed statement, they say they would hit the waters 30 to 40 kilometers away from Guam, but you never know how accurate or inaccurate those missiles could be. Senator Markey, thanks so much for joining us.
And this would be in the week that we're of the anniversary of the Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombs being detonated on Japan. We should learn from history. We should go to the table. Nuclear weapons should never again be used on this planet.
Well, I just want to be precise, Senator. They're not saying that these 4 ballistic missiles would have nuclear warheads. They're just saying that they would fly over Japan and land very, very close to the U.S. territory of Guam. That's a threat that they're making right now. The president yesterday said any more threats from North Korea, they'll face fire and fury and the power of the United States. We're standing by. We'll get reaction from the Trump administration.
And by that, I think he is implying the use of nuclear weapons. That is what I am referring to.
All right, stand by, Senator. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to have much more of the breaking news coming out of North Korea only moments ago. The president's surprise ad lib on fire and fury. Other news we're following as well, including what were FBI agents looking for when they raided the home of the former Trump campaign chairman, Paul Manafort. We're going to tell you what we're learning about the search and where all of this could lead.
The Situation Room with Walt Blitzer is brought to you by IBM. You, powered by data, knowledge, insight. That's you, to the power of IBM.
Hey, I've got the trend analysis.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi. You guys going to the company picnic this weekend? Picnics are delightful.
Wish we could, but we're stuck here catching up on things.
But we just compared historical claims to coverages.
Oh, we have this new audit.
My natural language API can help us score those by noon. Great. See you guys there. We would not miss it.
What's a neat like I took it?
I love to learn.
Whether it's new business, new boss, or new romance, these are the designer moments. Now designer suits start at $279 at men's warehouse. You're gonna like the way they look in a designer suit. Now you can have everything. And your family can too. The 2017 Mitsubishi Outlander with standard third row seating, one of America's safest crossovers, well equipped for under $24,000. Get up to $2,000 cash back or 0% APR for 72 months on select models. If you have Medicare Parts A and B and want more coverage, guess what? You can apply for a Medicare Supplement Insurance Plan whenever you want. No enrollment window, no waiting to apply. That means now may be a great time to shop for an AARP Medicare Supplement Insurance Plan, insured by United Healthcare Insurance Company. Medicare doesn't cover everything, and like all standardized Medicare Supplement Insurance Plans, these help cover some of what Medicare doesn't pay. So don't wait. Call now to request your free decision guide. It could help you find the AARP Medicare Supplement Plan that works for you. These types of plans have no networks, so you get to choose any doctor who accepts Medicare patients. Rates are competitive, and they're the only plans of their kind endorsed by AARP. Remember, these plans let you apply all year round. So call today, because now's the perfect time to learn more. Go on.
The Dark Tower is the #1 movie in America. There's an idea looks like a idea with my heart. The Dark Tower, we need a team.
At Ring, we have over 1 million happy customers, and today I brought one to help me install some more.
Let's get to work, Jimmy.
Let's do this.
Let's make these neighborhoods safe.
We've proved with the LAPD that having 10% of the homes in the rings were able to reduce crime by 50% in the neighborhood.
It's Shaq and Jamie, man.
So Shaq and I just put this up for you. You got a new camera, floodlight, motion detection. Here's the view pros.
Bring back the floodlight cameras. I want to see the whole movie now.
That's perfect. There we go.
Nice little speaker. What you got in there?
It's fantastic. The picture. I can see him. I can see everything that's going on. It's awesome. I can be anywhere and see who comes to my door.
Look at that, Shaq. The whole backyard. You can see that.
That's nice. All right, Shaq. I see you and Jamie. Hold up. That's it. It works. I love making neighborhoods safe. Always home, baby.
Hi, I'm Jesse, and I'm Ben. We started Hubble because contact lenses are too expensive. At Hubble, our fresh daily contacts are affordable and delivered straight to you. Get your first 2 weeks free at HubbleContacts.com.
With menopause, I expected hot flashes. But struggling to zip my jeans? I'm not ready for elastic waistbands.
Only Estrogen Weight Management helps safely manage weight and release hot flashes. Safe, trusted Estrogen.
The first survivor of Alzheimer's disease is out there, and the Alzheimer's Association is going to make it happen. But we won't get there without you. Visit alz.org to join the fight.
Closed captioning brought to you by non-prescription IBR for irritable bowel syndrome.
For years I suffered from abdominal pain and bloating. My doctor recommended IBGuard. Now, I'm in control of my IBS. Non-prescription IBGuard calms the angry gut.
The breaking news tonight, North Korea has just released a new statement in response to threats from the Trump administration, saying the Kim Jong-un regime is, quote, seriously examining a strike directed near Guam. We're not much more on that coming up in a few moments, but there's another major development we're following in the Russia investigation. We're learning more about an FBI raid on the home of former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort. Investigators for the special counsel Robert Mueller barging in without any warning. Our justice correspondent Jessica Schneider has been digging into the story for us. Jessica, we're told Manafort had been cooperating with investigators, but all of a sudden, this explosion.
Yeah, right. And this was a raid that presumably secured material that Paul Manafort probably hadn't already turned over. And the fact that this raid came down as a surprise in the darkness of early morning hours, it signifies that special counsel could be sending a message and getting serious. Tonight, CNN has learned of an unannounced raid on Paul Manafort's Alexandria, Virginia apartment. According to the Washington Post, it unfolded in the early morning hours July 26th, the day after Manafort voluntarily answered questions from the Senate Intelligence Committee staff, with agents seizing financial and tax records, among other documents. The raid appears to be unusual since Manafort has repeatedly claimed he is cooperating, and it marks a significant step in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation.
The FBI agents working for Special Counsel Mueller believe that he is hiding something, and that they conducted their search in the early morning, as is normal for them, so that the individual whose residence it is has no opportunity to destroy or otherwise tamper with the evidence that they seek.
Manafort stepped down as Trump's campaign chair last August as questions about Russia's involvement in the election intensified.
Are there any ties between Mr. Trump, you, or your campaign, and Putin and his regime?
No, there are not. It's absurd, and there's no basis to it.
But CNN has learned investigators have become suspicious of Manafort after they turned up intercepted communications from suspected Russian operatives discussing Russian efforts to work with Manafort to gather information that could hurt Hillary Clinton's bid for the White House, according to U.S. officials. Manafort's attendance at a June 2016 Trump Tower meeting with Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, and a Russian lawyer has also piqued the interest of federal investigators. During the campaign, Manafort denied working with the Russians.
Why is it so far-fetched to blame the Russians and say that the motive was to help you?
It's just absurd.
Agents raided Manafort's home one day after he met behind closed doors with the Senate Intelligence Committee. And CNN is told Manafort turned in approximately 400 pages to the Senate Judiciary Committee on August 2nd. Many of those documents pertain to Manafort's retroactively registering as a foreign agent at the end of June. Paul Manafort disclosed he was paid $17 million for consulting work he did for a pro-Russia political party before he became Trump's campaign chair. It's been a focus of FBI and DOJ prosecutors, according to U.S. officials briefed on the investigation. Investigators are scrutinizing Manafort's tax and business records to determine whether any criminal violation may have occurred. Mueller's former special counsel at the Justice Department says if there's evidence of other crimes committed by Manafort, it could be leverage for the special counsel to convince Manafort to cooperate.
If you can obtain charges that are viable against them on something collateral to that, then you can use that as leverage to strike a deal with respect to the type of evidence that you want with respect to the heart of your matter, in this case, the collusion.
And Paul Manafort's spokesman confirms the raid, but then reiterated that Manafort has, quote, consistently cooperated with law enforcement and other serious inquiries, and did so on this occasion as well. But the FBI obviously hasn't gotten what they wanted, and they ultimately resorted to this raid.
Well, truly dramatic development. Jessica Schneider reporting for us. Thanks, Barry.
If you have a perfect smile, then this commercial is not for you. If you won the lottery and your teeth are absolutely spot on, then go ahead and skip this commercial. My name is Phil Watson. I'm with BrighterMichelin.com, and I build smile makeovers for people all over the world. And the reason why they come to me instead of their dentist is because it's too freaking expensive. I know it, you know it. Most people don't know about removable dental veneers and about how they can change your smile. But if you have bad teeth, if you have crooked teeth, if you have missing teeth, you already know what your smile would be if it was amazing. You know the changes it would make in your life. Look at these amazing results. This is an after picture of someone that we did just a few days ago. Now let me show you what they look like 14 days before that. Here's another one. 14 days before that. Guys, if your smile looks like this, and you want to change it to this, come see me at BrighterMichelin.com. Don't screw around with your smile. Don't put it off. Don't wait. We build amazing smile makeovers. Our process is lab direct. There's no dentist visit. You don't have to come in. There's not x-rays. All you have to do is want to work with us online. There's no reason to live your life putting your hand over your smile. Come see me at BrighterMichelin.com.
Warrant, again, very unusual in a white-collar investigation, where the usual way to obtain evidence is
is through subpoena and voluntary compliance.
Very quickly, what does it say that this raid happened the morning after he actually testified before Senate Intelligence Committee investigators?
I'm less sure about what that means because I don't know that there has been close coordination between the Senate committee and the independent special counsel investigation. That's a bit of a mystery to me, the timing.
All right, Jeffrey Tubin, thanks very much for that analysis. Just ahead, we'll have more of the breaking news. North Korea now responding publicly, very directly, to President Trump's fire and fury threats.
At Farmers, we've seen almost everything, so we know how to cover almost anything, even a swing set standoff. And we covered it. July 1st, 2015. Talk to Farmers. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. We are farmers.
So I think I got to get my roof repaired. You know anybody?
Yeah, I tried.
Yeah, great. Can you do a free background check on them? Get me some additional quotes. I'm looking for 2 weeks from now.
You can't expect your neighbors to do everything Home Advisor can. So to find and book a top-rated home pro for free, just ask Home Advisor. My life? It's about getting better at playing golf. And better means the shredder method for massage and deep. More flexibility, more mobility, more performance.
You know what I'm thinking when I use it? I mean, we're talking about $6 trillion here. That's a whole lot of cash out there people are just sitting on. Many older Americans are in a tough spot right now. They just don't have enough savings to get by. It's their biggest concern. They could be our family, our friends. And then there's that $6 trillion. That's the amount retired homeowners have already paid into their homes. It comes down to an average of more than $200,000 for a senior household. So, why not use a reverse mortgage loan to access that equity?
Find out more. Call us today to receive a free information kit complete with a DVD presented by Tom Selleck. The kit will help you understand more about a reverse mortgage, decide if it's right for you, and the simple ways you need to qualify. Call 1-800-265-5152.
The reverse mortgage loan from AAG uses your built-up home equity to give you cash now, and when you need it in the future. Pay it back when it works for you, or in one lump sum when you leave the home.
Call now for a free, no-obligation information kit to find out how a reverse mortgage loan can pay for living expenses, medical bills, even credit card bills. Call 1-800-265-5152.
I know what you're thinking. Why me? And why AAG? Well, I've done my homework, and I know how dedicated AAG is to helping retirees in a caring, ethical way. I trust them. I think you can too.
If you're 62 or older and own your home, the info kit will show you how to access your home's equity to give you cash when you need it. It'll eliminate those monthly mortgage payments and give you the extra money to renovate the home or pay off bills. Call 1-800-265-5152.
When we moved, we didn't have anything, so we used OfferUp. It's a free app where you can find awesome things people nearby are selling. It was a great way to furnish our home and get to know our new city.
Now we have furniture and friends.
OfferUp is free to use. Find anything you want nearby.
Tonight, President Trump's threat to North Korea.
They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
How might Kim Jong-un respond? Anderson Cooper 360, live tonight Eastern.
I won this 55-inch TV for less than $30 on DealDash.com. I got this $1,200 computer for $100.71.
These aren't actors, they're real people who got real savings at DealDash.com, the fair and honest bidding site. At DealDash.com, you can save up to 99%, but hurry, everything must go.
And shipping is always free.
Visit DealDash.com and start bidding today.
Right about now, it would be nice to get some handyman estimates. Or see how much it costs to get red wine out of a white carpet. If it's cheaper to hire movers, then replace their dishes. Or if paying for a personal trainer could have prevented this. No matter what happens,
Thumbtack can help. Get custom prices from local pros, read reviews, then hire someone to get the job done. Get estimates for free at thumbtack.com today.
This is CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Breaking tonight, North Korea now firing back at President Trump's warning of fire and fury, mocking the President of the United States, saying he fails to grasp the gravity of the situation while he's playing golf. The top North Korean commander ramping up the threat of an attack on the U.S. territory of Guam, offering details about the specifics of his battle plan. Let's bring in our correspondents, analysts, and specialists. And Phil Mudd, it looks like the North Koreans, in this lengthy statement, basically explaining how they're going to launch 4 intermediate-range ballistic missiles towards Guam. They've crossed the red line the president drew yesterday.
What's he going to do about it? That's the problem with ratcheting it up. We discussed this last night, the law of unintended consequences. We see it within 24 hours. The president ratchets it up, and the North Koreans say, okay, you got a pair of 2s, we got 3 3s. We're going to throw them on the table. What is the president going to do? When the North Koreans say this, he's got a couple options. One, talk. Doesn't seem like he wants to do that. The Secretary of State's talking about that. Number 2, military action. We don't understand the implications, and I don't think he does, of military action. We're not only talking about going against a ballistic missile capability, you're talking about ensuring that the regime leadership is gone so they can't rebuild the capability. That means an American engagement like the one we had in Iraq. Nobody in this town is going to talk about that. So as soon as we ratchet up, my question is, what's the end game? Because I don't see it.
The North Korean statement, and you've read it, John Kirby, very specific, very detailed. They say the U.S. has until mid-August, only a few days from now, to come up with some better language. We're keep closely watching the speech and behavior of the U.S. And then they say they'll launch these. If it doesn't change, they'll launch these 4 intermediate-range ballistic missiles, and they'll land, according to them, 30 to 40 kilometers from Guam. That sounds like such a specific threat.
It very much is. That is certainly what strikes you when you read that statement. It's the naval equivalent of a shot across the bow, only they're telling you before they take the shot across the bow when they're going to do it, where they're going to do it, and how they're going to do it. So it's a very specifically designed threat here to try to change the rhetoric coming out of the United States and to try to force a different outcome. I have never seen this come out of Pyongyang before, not anything like this. I mean, you're used to bellicose rhetoric, but with such specificity, the type of missile, the trajectory, how far away from Guam it's going to land. I mean, what they're trying to convey, I think, is that they need to be taken extremely seriously with this threat.
Will Ripley, you've been to North Korea more than a dozen times, and I think that John Kirby is absolutely right. I have not heard this kind of specific threat launched, if you will, by the North Koreans with all the details of where these missiles would be fired from. They fly over Japan, and they land very, very close to the U.S. territory of Guam.
And if North Korea follows through on this threat, Wolf, it would be their most provocative missile test ever. Far more provocative than the 2 ICBMs that were launched last month, including the most recent, which landed relatively close to Japan. This tops all of that, because what they're talking about is to simulate, and not even simulate, to demonstrate the kind of attack that could potentially overwhelm U.S. missile defense systems on Guam. It is a known fact that that missile defense system, if you're talking about one missile approaching, that's a very different scenario from 4. So this is North Korea saying that they are prepared to show President Trump and the United States that they have the capability right now to simultaneously launch an intermediate range missile that could travel up to 5,000 kilometers, theoretically putting Guam within striking range. And they are confident enough, they say, that they could put these missiles down within 30 to 40 kilometers of key U.S. military assets and more than 160,000 American citizens on this 210 square mile island. They technically are confident that they can do this, or they wouldn't spell it out in black and white like this. And if they go forward with this test, it will be by far the most provocative test they've done. And what will the United States do in response? And then what will the North Koreans do in response? This is what China has been talking about, this chain reaction, this sequence of events going down a road from which there is no return, an accidental war, on the Korean Peninsula, which everyone agrees would be absolutely catastrophic.
And Gloria, as you know, the president seemed to draw this red line yesterday in the fire and fury statement. Is he now boxed in because there is a new threat? He said if there are any more threats from North Korea, and they'll face fire and fury.
Well, it would seem that he is. I mean, clearly, I think if I were the administration, I might.
There's way too many people that are embarrassed to smile. Most clients have already been to a dentist, and they feel like they can't afford a real smile makeover. At Brighter Image Lab, we don't believe that a smile makeover is a luxury, and we don't think you can put a price under smile. I can get you incredible results in a matter of minutes, and you're going to be amazed. We can take your smile from bad to beautiful. Our process is lab direct. There's no dentist visit. At Brighter Image Lab, we believe your smile's too beautiful not to smile whenever you want. I think the results speak for themselves. I did it for her. I'll do it for you. You can't afford a smile makeover, and you're going to smile and smile and smile. Come see how we made these results happen at brighterimagelab.com.
Dialogue is not possible with such a guy bereft of reason, and only absolute force can work on him. You've covered the president. He's going to have to respond to this thing.
We'll see if he does. So far, we've reached out to the White House, multiple people in the National Security Council. They have not responded, and we do not have an indication that they will respond directly to this immediately. They did not respond yesterday on the Guam threat either. So the reality here is this is the challenge and the difficulty of a president having this in his own voice, because now they are directly firing back at him, essentially calling him into question, his credibility, his manhood in one respect into question. And this is something the world has been watching President Trump during these first 200 days of his time in office here. They know what gets under his skin. This statement to me would seem to get under his skin, but we will see, but we will see if they react to it. But others inside the government are saying they're not sure what the red line is. It appears that they may have crossed it, but was the red line really intentional? We know the president was improvising yesterday when he was speaking. I was told by 3 officials today that he said these words yesterday off the cuff. It was not a scripted statement, but he said them. Those words are his. So the next move is the White House.
You don't get to say never mind when you're president,
Sure.
because you've said it. And so now they have to be.
If he does respond, it would probably be in a tweet tonight. But again, we do not know if the White House is going to respond to this immediately.
Because Rebecca, the president did draw a red line. He specifically said any more threats from North Korea, they will face this fire and fury. And now it's not just a threat; it's a very specific, detailed threat with all sorts of military jargon.
And this really highlights, I think, Wolf, a really important challenge for the president and also a question, because we've seen this sort of hyperbole from him here at home in the United States. And we've seen lawmakers on both sides of the aisle sort of become accustomed to statements from the president that are not necessarily meant to be taken literally or even seriously, and that lawmakers immediately dismiss out of the pan and say, oh, that's just Donald Trump being Donald Trump. But Donald Trump, as president of the United States, I don't think is going to get the same pass from the international community, and especially when you're talking about an adversary like North Korea, who is going to take his statements seriously and potentially literally. I think the president is potentially learning an important lesson here, that words do have meaning, and that people abroad are going to take him very seriously.
I want to bring in our global affairs correspondent, Elise Lavin, over at the State Department. Are you getting any reaction to this very, very tough statement from the North Koreans?
No reaction to this latest statement, Wolf, but there's been a lot of talk here at the State Department about this war of words between North Korea and the president. You'll notice this morning, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson in Asia talking to reporters, really in an effort to try and calm the situation, tone it down, and walk it back, say that Americans don't need to be concerned about any attack on the U.S. right now, but that the president, all he was trying to do was make clear that the U.S. has resolved to
though there's a lot of consternation about Secretary Tillerson that was one of his finest hours in terms of really being a diplomat, trying to calm it down, because that statement yesterday by President Trump, fire and fury, certainly not very diplomatic and not concerning to both allies and Americans at home.
The statement, Phil Mudd, if you read it carefully, says there's only a few days left before they actually go ahead and launch these 4 intermediate-range ballistic missiles. Mid-August, the KPA strategic force will finally complete the plan until mid-August, report to the Commander-in-Chief, wait for his order. We keep closely watching the speech and behavior of the U.S.
We're missing one point here, and that is we have a new chief of staff who's still supposed to put a lid on this. We have a secretary of defense who has climbed down the president on other issues. Remember waterboarding? The president used to talk about waterboarding. Jim Mattis comes in, and the president says, well, my advisors tell me something else. We saw a clue today from these advisors. Secretary of State Tillerson used the word dialogue. Note that word also showed up in the North Korean statement. Tillerson is giving the president an out to say, the president says, I'm concerned, but my advisors say we ought to take another step or two, so I'll defer to them on this. But if it goes south, I'm going to go ugly. I think the real critical step in the next 24 hours is his advisor saying, you better chill out because we don't have any options.
Will Ripley, the statement also says, the unprecedented step that the North Koreans are now considering will give stronger and confidence and certain victory and courage to the Korean people and help them witness what they're calling the wretched plight of the U.S. imperialists. That's sort of standard North Korean rhetoric, but the details in this warning to the United States, the specific threat to the U.S. is, you have 160,000 plus U.S. citizens living in Guam. Get ready, because these 4 ballistic missiles they could be on the way.
Just a second, let me the broadcast.
It is, and we should also.
Okay. Yes, you're a fucking idiot. And you're blocked. Yeah, so anyway. Looks like we haven't had much chat activity since the giant chicken incident. But anyways, thanks for watching, and hope you found this informative and stimulating. Peace.